so many different agencies and marketers today are just clicking buttons. They're just clicking buttons. They don't take the time to really understand their clients, unique positioning. Why was that business even created? Why does that founder or leader, CEO, get up every morning and do the work that they do? What we do, which is get as close to the business as possible so that we can be better marketers on their behalf.
Today's episode might go one of multiple directions.
Mhm.
However, I can tell you that what drew me to today's guest was the topics around social commerce, around behavioral marketing, around how AI is impacting a consumer's experience and your career. And then, as we were sitting here talking before we started recording, he tells me that he has a background, a master's degree in Adam, what is it again? Consumer psychology?
Consumer psychology. Yeah, I was
Consumer.
actually going to say, Jeff, I was hoping that what drew you to me on this was my handsome face, but I'll let that slide. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll set that one aside. For those that don't know us well enough, and
Thanks,
I don't
Jeff.
even know
Thanks, Jeff.
you, we just met. I'm not afraid of those jokes. But yeah, for today, I think we'll go ahead and set that aside. I want to focus, and so first of all, let me just go ahead and introduce Adam Ortman, who is the CEO and founder of Kinetic 319. There's a story behind that too, if anybody's wondering. Maybe I was the only one. But there's a psychological thought process that went into the name Kinetic 319. I'll let him share that story. But Adam, from what I understand, does not have a real estate background, although he has a company that works with all sorts of businesses. And I mean some big name businesses, including the likes of American Express and Nike and Kellogg, Textron, some big names, right? And Adam doesn't know this about me, but we've touched on this, that this has been a big passion of mine. And so I know, Adam, that the people listening to this, real estate agents, the real estate industry, they struggle with this. And I hope that you can bring some kind of outside expertise to help enlighten our audience to improve the way they market their brands, how they use technology, and, hopefully grow a deeper connection to the person that ultimately drives their business. So without further ado, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. And what a fantastic introduction. I appreciate being here. I appreciate the time. And I love the topic that we're talking about. And to your point, while I don't have a necessarily a specialization in realty and in realtors specifically or in this space, I have touched nearly every industry over the last 25 years of my career. But one thing that you did touch on that is very near and dear to my heart is that idea about connection. So when you boil down advertising and marketing and media in general, it is really all about that connection. It's about making that connection with the right person at the right time and really identifying the products and services that you are providing as a business, in this case, your realty services, and making sure that that is benefiting positively that end consumer and purchaser. That whole idea about connection, we actually have an entire talk track on this at Kinetic 319 about where connection meets conversion. And that really talks about the ethos behind not only my team's work, but also in just how we approach different types of businesses in different of industry.
Give us a 2 minute, who is Adam Ortman? And then what led you to Kinetic 319? And then in that, with that explanation of what the hell is 319?
So yes, I have really spent the last 25 years in the advertising world on the agency side primarily. Over the last 10, 12 years, I really spent a lot of that time in leadership, running agencies, running teams, working with the clients that you mentioned, like the Nikes, the United Healthcares, the Textrons. And it's been a fantastic ride. And really, what I have learned over those years are some things that agencies are doing poorly that I hate, and some things that agencies are doing well, really well that I love. And those are really the things that I get to culminate into my own agency with Kinetic 319. And so with Kinetic 319, as many founders and entrepreneurs are really fueled by is that idea of I could do it better. And really, that idea of connection meets conversion is that fuel, is that understanding that so many different agencies and marketers today are just clicking buttons. They're just clicking buttons. They don't take the time to really understand their clients, unique positioning. Why was that business even created? Why does that founder or leader, CEO, get up every morning and do the work that they do? So we do have a very proprietary onboarding process and what we do, which is get as close to the business as possible that we're working with so that we can be better marketers on their behalf. We do that work for clients all around the world. We have a team across the United States. To your point before, we're working with clients across the board in regards to industries. But really, that is boiling it down. We want to we want to know your business better than any other agency team. And that really comes from where that connection meets conversion, because we understand at the end of the day that connection is important, but conversion is also important because they pay the bills. So
Mhm.
we're not under any delusion that you all don't have bills to pay at the end of the day. Connect 319 is a fun. I was on a work trip overseas in London when this came to me overnight, and Kinetic 319 was the name. It came to me probably at 2 o'clock in the morning. And 319 really is, to back that up really quickly, there's some theory around the psychology between brand and names. And when you put a arbitrary number or an arbitrary combination of letters into a brand name, it triggers the intrigue question. What does this mean? Right. And that's great because then I get to talk about my brand for 2 minutes, which is
Mhm.
fantastic.
Mhm.
Um,
Who actually tracked that? The first ad or in
It
back in
is
17?
a newsletter that was in Boston. It wasn't a state then. It was in Boston. It was a man that was trying to sell his property, his real estate. And
What's the
he
irony
was
in that, huh?
exactly, he was trying to sell his property. And he worked with the editor of his little community, colony newsletter, that was published probably once a month back then, maybe even less. And he basically put it into an article that they were writing about the sale of his property. And it was now coined as the first quote unquote advertisement published in North America. Frankly, advertising has been around for thousands of years. We can tie that all the way back to the Greeks. But really, the first one that was coined in North America was that specific newsletter from that Boston editor. I worked with a librarian in Boston and got a screenshot of it. So it's funny that I literally got that maybe 2 months ago, and we're adding it to our website. And God, I nerd out about this stuff all day long. But anyway, it's really cool to
Interesting.
see. Yeah, it's really cool to
Interesting.
see.
I'm actually the next thing that comes to mind, and I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole because that's not why anybody's listening today. But I like to take these and have a little
Sure.
fun with them. When you say published, like they didn't have technology back then. How would they
No.
even putting a newsletter, a newspaper,
Yeah.
maybe? How would they even put something like that out? Do you have
They
any
were
idea?
pressing it.
All right, so let's move forward here and let's talk about consumer psychology. And as I
Sure.
mentioned, that was your master's degree. Which you mind me asking, when did you graduate from college?
That was back in 2011.
Okay,
Back
so
in
you're
2010, 2011.
you're
Yeah.
youngish, millennial. Is that
Yeah.
what you are? Yeah.
Yeah. Just on the cusp. Yeah.
Okay, so someone who was in that degree or in that, you were chasing that path in college. This was
Uh-huh.
really it didn't predate social media, but it was far before social media is what it is today. So how did that kind of
Completely
correlate?
different.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Completely different. I mean, YouTube and Facebook came out, I think, just years after each other in 2006-ish.
something like that. Yep.
And I mean, my first agency job, I was 17 years old. I was 18 years old. I was an intern just doing Yahoo paid ads because Google ads didn't even exist. So
Wow.
back in the day, you're having to manually run campaigns. And I was fascinated with this idea of how people really interacted with companies. I come from 5 generations of entrepreneurs myself. So it was always nice to see my parents and relatives in their own businesses interacting with their own customers and their own consumers. Basically, it depends on what relative I'm talking about. they I was surrounded by that relationship my entire life, so I was always kind of fascinated by it. And I was drawn to it in my undergrad because I took, you always take a billion classes in your undergrad and you're exposed to all these different things. I loved my consumer psych undergrad class, which led me to a natural extension in my master's. I also love that because you can throw this your stick in this place and hit probably 40 MBAs. It also is a good differentiator, but it's nice to I have an emphasis that I really, really loved and I still love because I can bring a lot of that theory into the practice. And when we build persona profiles for our clients, when we do targeting planning and persona building, audience building, we pull in a lot of those bits. I literally have books like next to my desk that I still pull up from college. It's a fun time. It's an amazing topic because it's one of those rare situations that you can read about it in theory, understand it as a science, but also see it in front of you in real life.
Yeah, yeah, fascinating. Okay,
Yeah.
so how are we going to adapt? And as I mentioned to Adam off air, because I live and have lived and breathed this industry for 25 plus years, and the
Oh
one
yeah.
thing that I have stood on stages and have been barking at real estate agents is, there's been a lot of things in the news. There was this big national lawsuit that really brought real estate agents into the news, and
Sure.
it really brought to light the negative sentiment and really enhanced said negative sentiment from a consumer to the industry. And Adam, I didn't say this to you before, but this is the way I break it down for real estate agents. It's
Yeah.
completely unfounded. It's not fair because when you think about, I mean, it is fair, but when you think about it, a consumer's perspective of a real estate agent, in my opinion, buying a house is a top five thing that you do in your life. Arguably, maybe even top three. One and two is probably marriage and kids in
Marriage,
whichever
kids,
order, right?
house. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And so,
Yeah.
why is the industry not celebrated? Well, I know the answer, but I'd love to kind of get your take on that perspective on as it relates to doing marketing and from that perspective, because I'm sure you see it from the outside. So, what is your take on that? And how would you react to that if you were speaking to a real estate agent? And you are.
I am very much so. Um, I think a lot of this has to go with just some of the tactics that has been exploited in the last, handful of years, 10, 15, 20, even probably more so than that, where you have these events, marriage, kids, whichever order that you're doing it in, then you have this house. And the house is unique because it includes a transaction. And that transaction has a third party involved in it. And then there's this interaction between am I going to win or are you going to win in regards to price, in regards to money and value exchange. And so that's a really interesting dynamic. And anytime there is a what I get, what you get scenario, anytime there's a me versus them, me versus you situation, there's always a, oh my God, am I going to get screwed? Am I going to get the best price? Are they going to sell me on something? Am I, that type of environment. So your mind automatically goes into defense mode. And so when you're dealing with an industry that you see real estate agent clients on Facebook, on Instagram, everywhere else, you're getting mailers in the mail all the time. You do feel like you want to put your heels in the ground a little bit because you go on a little bit on the defense. So that's kind of what I'm thinking in regards to as a consumer looking at this space, how there might be some hesitancy or some negative sentiment around it because you are always on that defense rather than kind of mutual partnership
Yeah.
perspective, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
And the first thing I thought of was the real estate agent who's standing in front of a Lamborghini or a private jet, which to me is an asinine marketing
Sure.
strategy. It makes no sense to me because what are you actually doing to the consumer from a psychology perspective other than bragging about how much money you make? And in most
Yeah.
cases, they're not your,
Yeah.
they're not your things. But it really is dumb. That's not, to me, that's maybe one of the ways. The other way is just the massive dilution where an industry that's filled with, and at its peak, several
Yeah.
million individual business operators are all competing for the same
Yes.
consumer. And then
Hungry.
they flooded this new outlet, this new medium, because now it's free. We used to have to pay for billboards and we still do TVs and radios and newspapers. But now, ooh, we have this opportunity to go
Hmm.
market for free. So we're all going to rush. And then they all is a monkey see, monkey do scenario. Oh, I
Very
saw
much.
Sally take a picture with her clients at closing. That seems like a good idea. I'm going to do that. I saw
Yeah.
Sally standing in front of her open house talking about 123 Main Street. I'm going to do that. I saw
Yeah.
Sally show her the award that this frivolous award that she won. I'm going to do that. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, there's millions of these posts and the world becomes inundated and the world becomes annoyed.
And that's called herd theory. One of the best psychological examples of this, and I love it, is the wave at any sporting event. It's exactly the same psychology, exactly the same. Is it good? Is it bad? Doesn't matter. People still do it, and they do it in their business, and they do it on social media. They do it at home. It's very human. It's a
Yeah.
very human condition. Yeah.
So so in other words, as it relates to marketing, then when you think like that, and this is how my mind goes, my mind is the opposite. And I don't know why I'm just wired differently, but it's like, okay, I see everybody doing this.
Do something else.
With
do,
that, it's
do
like
something else.
if I gave you two public pools, you have an option. You could take your kids to a public pool. One of them is packed, they're shoulder to shoulder. The other one, there's only one person in it. Which one are you going to choose? The obvious answer is the one with one person in it because the other one's disgusting. But the reality is, psychologically, in most of our choices in life, we choose the pool that they're shoulder to shoulder, and which is
Yes.
disgusting.
Yes.
So, why? How? Why does this happen? And how do we get out of it?
Yeah. I mean, marketing has a very good way of storytelling. And how you get out of that is you have to tell your story differently, right? In the pool scenario, your psychology says, well, something must be wrong with that other pool, right? Why is no one else in there?
Yeah.
So the storytelling is nothing is wrong with this pool. You all are just idiots in that other pool. So maybe you're telling the wrong story. So tell your story differently and it's also understanding, right? So you're not going to just say, send a message to your customers or your potential signers. You want to understand their motivations and priorities and fears because we're talking about now Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you want to go back to psychology, their motivations, priorities, and fears, leverage their motivations, priorities, and fears, and basically tap into them and say, well, why wouldn't this person be wanting to buy this house in this area on this block? And maybe approach that, shine light on it a little bit differently through the storytelling mechanism of marketing and advertising. So whether it's social media, organic social posts on your own page, or even if you're paying for ads, wherever that may be, identify the problem that you are solving through the sale of this house or this, piece of real estate, whatever it may be, and leverage it to your advantage. If you're just throwing messages out that look and feel exactly like your competitors, one, that's not going to be effective. And two, if you're saying the same message to everybody, you're probably not saying a message to anybody. So you
Mm.
want to make sure that you're tailoring what you're saying to not only the product that you're selling, because there's all these houses that are, there's all these ads that are just showing pictures of houses with prices and how many bedrooms and bathrooms that they have, but they actually aren't saying, what is this house going to solve for you? What are you going to get by getting this house other than a 2 bedroom, 2 bath? So I know we just talked about a lot of things in that line, but that's how marketing gets you from the very crowded pool to the empty pool is by understanding that fear of, hey, there's
Mhm.
something wrong with that pool, and then leveraging marketing messaging to maybe attract you over.
You think when you're doing marketing, especially social marketing, that you're marketing to many, but the reality is you're only marketing to one.
There's one
And
person.
yeah, and the
100%.
problem is that when we jump into this, we just, well, I'm putting a post on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, 300 people, 3,000, 3,000,000 people will see it. So I'm marketing to many, but the reality is you're really only talking to one individual 300, 3,000, 3,000,000 times on the other end.
Yeah. Yes, and we do that at Connect 319. How that expresses itself at Connect 319 is every single one of our clients, we go through an audience profiling exercise. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, where we look at not only who this person is in regards to who's going to benefit the most from this product or service, the target consumer, target audience, but also, you know, demographics are great. I think a lot of agencies and a lot of people think about that. Is it male, female, otherwise? What's their household income? Where do they live? How many kids do they have? But taking it a step further gets you closer to getting to that person, that one person, which is the psychographics and the media consumption behaviors. That's really, really important because the psychographics understand things like loyalty, understand things like technophilia. So are they technophiles? Are they into technology? Do they hate technology? How do they feel? How price sensitive are they? Do they lean into family values, loyalist values? And then other side of the house, which is the media consumption side, which we can pull data from the tools that we have. How many hours are they actually spending on TV, on social media, on Reddit, on Facebook, whatever that is? That data is a little fuzzy in regards to getting to that one person, but it's all this perspective that you should get when you're looking as a realtor trying to find the person for this house. You should understand who that person is, what makes them tick, not only just what their age and gender is, but also what makes them tick kind of in their head. So then you can help them down the journey of
Hmm.
if they are interested in your properties.
Which everything that you're describing right now makes me think of the real estate agent. And this isn't just real estate agents, because
Sure.
like you, I work with a lot of different industries. And if I had a nickel for every time a business owner, a plumber, a construction company, a real estate agent said, when I got into business, I never realized I was going, and now they're saying I have to become a social media influencer. What I articulate that to say is I have to become good at social media marketing. As you're talking about some of this stuff, 5 years ago, I think people glossed over these conversations. Today, they're paying more attention, listening more, still not doing anything about it because they're not truly trying to understand this. Because I think, and this is probably most businesses that are guilty of this, they're constantly chasing the next deal. And so they're
Always.
so
There,
they're
yeah,
they're
always.
so focused on the next seller, buyer, person that you're going to do a project for, paint their walls, that you lose focus on the grander scale. And I think you understand what I'm saying when I say this. And so, how would you translate that to a real estate agent who has a hard time wrapping their head around these conversations around consumer psychology, which sounds super advanced, but in the reality of things, that's what you got to do. That's what you got to become an
We're
expert at.
we're all doing it every day. We're all doing it every day. Consumer psychology. We're all consumers. We're all interacting with businesses every single day. And um, you are talking about the strategy versus the tactic idea, where a lot of businesses get so caught up in the, okay, this didn't work, so let's go to this next thing. Let's do the Facebook, let's do the LinkedIn profile, and let's post a bunch on the LinkedIn profile. And they focus on just tactic after tactic, but they lose sight of the larger picture, which is really the strategic positioning and the strategic execution of your business. And so I always equate this back when I'm talking more so on the startup side. I have conversations where, have you generated an actual business plan? Because I think this is really spot on for realtors as well, because that business plan allows you to look at the business. You can kind of look at it a couple different ways, operationally as well as growth, right? If you're focusing on the growth side of the strategy, you are starting to pull in different perspectives. A lot of the audience work that I was just describing is fits in here. What are your competitors, other real estate agents doing in the space? Put it in here so they can influence what your overall strategy looks like. So you can say, I want to do this, I don't want to do that. And then looking at what else is going on. I mean, realtors that might be selling specifically within their neighborhood, within their communities, what's going on within your community? What macro trends are impacting sales within your specific region? Because that's going to influence how people are purchasing, whether it's now, whether it's later, what indicators they are showcasing that show interest in potentially making a move. So I think collecting all of this information first and then sitting with it, organizing it in a way that says, okay, I actually have a very good picture now of what I'm working within. And now let's put together a strategy of what does the next 3 months look like? 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. So then you can start to lay out and say, this didn't work, but rather than just pulling it back and saying, well, let's go to the next thing. Why didn't it work? Maybe tweak it. Maybe adjust it a little bit because you're selecting a tactic within a larger strategy because of a reason. So I'm doing Facebook because I now have the because the strategy dictates it. And if it's not working, it might be something that I'm doing, not necessarily that the platform or the specific tactic is doing. So collect all of your variables, put together a plan and a strategy that looks further out than just a month. And then also understand that things will not be, linearly positive all the time, and always just try to innovate and tweak where you are sure things should be working to do to your strategy.
How would you?
Yeah, you're spot
Yeah.
on. You would have, I mean, I wouldn't, but I could film a picture of myself on a toilet and it can get 100 million views, right? I can get 30,000 shares, 100,000 likes. When you're talking about quality, the data is your friend
Yeah.
when it comes to the Facebook and the other social media platforms or just any type of advertising in general. Data is absolutely going to set you free. So when you're talking about quality in this sense, when you're saying, okay, what are my customers or followers valuing, they will show that in if they're watching the entire video, if they're liking it or reacting to it, if they're commenting on it. Sharing is even more powerful. So when you're looking at your ongoing posting, say on Facebook, yes, consistency is key. Quality is key, but make sure that when you're leveraging quality and defining quality, you're looking at the data and the interaction, not necessarily the production quality in the
Hmm.
sense, the quality more on are people engaging with it. That engagement factor is the entire point. And that really goes back to why social platforms were created, right? They're created so that people can, find something entertaining or maybe educating or funny or whatever that may be. And again, going back to understanding your customer, what tickles their fancy or what their fears are, the motivations, their priorities, having that insight can actually help craft your content when you're posting it because that should lead to greater quote unquote quality or engagement on those posts.
Okay, so as we talk about that, as we're on this conversation about implementation
Yeah.
now, with more consistency comes a higher quality. It's just
Hmm.
the way it is. If you're
Hmm.
trying to run a marathon and you've never run more than a mile, you can't run 26.2 miles tomorrow. You have
Correct.
to build up to that, and it's the same concept with anything. You want to lift heavier weights, you've got to start low and build yourself up.
Hmm.
You name it, right? Anything. And so that consistency creates a higher quality, and then all of a sudden creates a lot of separation. Now, as you talk about the next component to that, which is the personality. So to the person who's fearful of that, who thinks
Yeah.
again, they're coming up with all the objections as why they're not going to do it. How do you help somebody overcome something like
Oh, that's a good question. Not one that I was prepared to answer.
that?
One, I have led many teams in my day. One of my favorite team building exercises that I really focused on, this was probably 10 years ago or so. I had a team of media managers. I was the director or senior director of media at the agency at the time. And overseeing a large team. It was probably about 30 of us. And there were some of my leaders that were really struggling with standing in front of clients and having to present and having to answer on the fly and having to be that personality because you do have to have that personality, stand up persona. One of the things that I really, really loved, and I still have, like some of these folks are now, VPs at Air New Zealand, for example. They still call me and they say, we've actually done this with our teams, or I've loved this about what we did in the past was we did a 6 week improv class. And it was so beneficial because not only did it include the rapport with my team, but excuse me, taught us how to think better on our feet. And I think once you get comfortable in front of a camera, in front of other people, you you lose a little bit of the, oh my God, what if I say this wrong? Or am I going to look stupid? Or, am I going to, mess this up? Or people going to hate this? You kind of let a lot of that fade away as you are in a little bit of a controlled environment. So, little bit obscure answer, but taking a course like that at probably your community center or whatever it is will absolutely benefit
Mhm.
you in many, many areas of your life, whether it's at work or even just in at home or communicating in general. Makes you become a fast thinker and a lot more confident when you're speaking about anything.
Yeah.
What I found.
I love it. Well, we're running up against the hour. I want to give
Yeah,
you a chance to kind of talk a little bit more about what you do and how someone can connect with you, and really just some parting thoughts.
yeah,
Because, yeah, as you can tell, this conversation is near and dear to my heart. I love having this conversation.
I
You and I
love
could
it.
probably talk for hours and days, and just geek out on this kind of stuff. But
Yeah,
so, give us your spiel and parting
yeah.
thoughts and whatnot.
I mean, Kinetic 319, we are primarily a media agency. So any type of advertising that exists, whether it's online or offline, we do all the strategy, the planning, all the activation of those types of advertisements. We also do a lot of SEO. So making sure that your website is appeasing the Google gods, excuse me, as well as writing all of the content. Everything we do is really, really wrapped up in analytics, and that's not only because I'm a huge analytical nerd, but also because it's so important. And it goes back to measuring what's working, what's not working from what we were talking about before. So we pack data into every single thing that we do. um, but no, this has been a fantastic conversation. If you want more information about Kinetic 319, what we do, our ethos, kind of how we think, kinetic319.com is great for us. Follow us on socials because we are actually posting every week our Stay Kinetic tips. So take a look at those on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Twitter, excuse me, X these days. And if you're ever needing anything, feel free to reach out. We have a lot of stuff going on with ask-kinetic.com is an open source platform for us. So if you go to ask-kinetic.com, ask a question, the answers are usually coming from me. We answer about 3 to 6 of those a month. So feel free to ask any question about marketing, about social media, about business. We do our best to always give back. We're always helping first because again, it goes back to that. I want to share where I can. And frankly, I hope that some of your listeners today got some good tidbits to go back to their own practices and adjust what they're doing.
And so if they want to go just do a little stalking, you mentioned the three
Stock away.
platforms. You said Facebook, you said LinkedIn, you said X. Is it just
Yep.
Kinetic 319? That's what we look for?
Kinetic 319. That's us.
Easy enough. And if somebody wanted to directly reach out, what's the best way to do so?
Yeah. Just send me an email at adam@kinetic319.com.
Awesome.
Yep.
Any parting thoughts? Anything to leave our audience with?
I will, and I love where this conversation went. It actually went a little bit differently than in a different direction than I was originally anticipating. But especially in today's real estate market, we're on a roller coaster, right? Markets will go up, they will go down. The one thing that never changes is what our motivations, priorities, and fears are. So understanding that human psychology, eh, the more you understand it, the better your performance as a realtor or a loan agent or whatever your specific practice is will be. So I think that taking some of the stuff that we talked about today to understand the psychology, what people actually care about, your specific people will absolutely pay out dividends in the long run.
Adam, it has been a pleasure. It's been fun. I wish we had more time, but
Same, Jeff.
it was I think a very rich conversation, and hopefully there's a handful of people that took something from this and are running out the door to go implement and
Yeah.
apply the things we've
Be
talked
careful.
about.
Don't trip. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so go check them out. Kinetic 319 on any of those three social platforms. You can email Adam. What was your email address one more time?
Adam@kinetic319.com.
Awesome. Adam, it was been a pleasure getting to know you and chat with you, and wish you nothing but the best and hope we can stay in touch.